Yars Revenge, the classic Atari 2600 game from 1982, where you play as this little guy, and you have to blow up this little guy with this little thing. You do it over and over again to score all the points. It was very cool, and old school gamers like me loved it. We played it repeatedly. Big hit, beloved classic. As is the case with many popular games, Yars Revenge has been updated and remade a handful of times over the years, including a homebrew semi-sequel from the mid-2000s called Yars Return that Atari themselves later released. But there has never been an actual official sequel or follow-up. Well, now that Atari is back in the games releasing business again and trying all kinds of ideas, there's a new Yars game developed by WayForward, the makers of the surprisingly great The Mummy Demastered, the recent Advance Wars update, and other beloved smaller titles. It's called Yars Rising, and it's, interesting. You play as a hacker lady named Emmy, who would rather be referred to by her hacker name, Yar.
You're Yar, right? The little bug guy in your GUI and tattoo.
Very good, Anthony Ochoa. Then I keep my Yar safe until I can fire my Z cannon at the Cotile. I think that's what it's called, short for Cotec Encryption Tile. Let's go with that.
More on that in a minute. You're part of a completely non-serious hacker collective, and you've infiltrated an up-to-no-good company called Cotec to break into their main server. The hack is successful, but you're now trapped inside the building and have to escape. You make your way through floor after floor, shooting robots and critters big and small, collecting power-ups, and listening to chill tunes. Eventually you're able to escape, but you soon learn that your problems are just beginning. So you're hearing all that and wondering, okay, what's this got to do with Yars Revenge other than the random name dropping? Well, your particular method of hacking is visualized by updated variations of classic Yars Revenge gameplay. As you discover terminals throughout the building, you'll play a round of Yars Revenge with a specific goal or an altered rule set. Sometimes you can't shoot. Sometimes you have to return to the neutral zone before your missile will appear. Sometimes it's sideways space invaders. Each and every terminal presents a brand new challenge. If you played a lot of Yars Revenge back in the day, as I did, you're going to find the updated physics and limitation of these mini versions a little frustrating at first. You can't fly through the top or bottom of the screen and emerge on the other side, for example. Your shots don't do the same amount of damage to the enemy's shield. Your cannon and missile are now mapped to two separate buttons. Having experience with the rule set and timing of the original game is going to throw you off here, and it will take time to adjust. Now, after completing a few of the hacking minigames, you'll find this entry on the main menu, which allows you to replay any of those along with new additional challenges. I really like this, but I'm torn about the levels being locked until you meet certain conditions in the game itself. I'm sure a lot of people would love to come to the game just for these, much like how many people never touch the campaign in a Call of Duty game, but play hundreds of hours of the multiplayer. Because while I have a level of tolerance for what this game is attempting to do, we all know a lot of people will not. The enemy behaviors and designs of the levels are pretty dumb. You're a few steps away from your cubicle at the start of the game, for example, and suddenly you encounter platforms that you have to jump to reach. This is an office building. Thankfully, the main character seems to provide running commentary for many of these silly choices.
A lot of air vents in this place. Our circulation is pretty good.
So at least the developers knew a lot of things were dumb, but it's just how video games have to be made sometimes. Do you want classic Atari references? Well, you're in luck. Atari is in the classic reference business. They're not as obvious as they were in Atari's previous release, Neo Sprint, but you're still going to get a lot of them. Your save station is a really nicely rendered computer space arcade cabinet, and so that's really neat. But don't think the Atari references stop there, oh no. Centipede, Black Widow, lots of Atari properties end up working their way into the narrative in one way or another. I literally got angry in a comical way when I realized why a certain character's name was what it was. Like, legit angry while also chuckling to myself as it clicked in my head. And the narrative does eventually try to become more of an actual Yars revenge thing, instead of just a weird shell for some minigames. It's interesting to watch it try to do that. Yars Rising looks nice for the kind of game it ultimately is, which again is not a Yars revenge game, but a Metroidvania-esque action platformer. The levels are colorful and nicely lit, the backgrounds look alive, character animations are smooth. It's all impressive given the size and scope of the release. That's not to say that the Yars levels aren't good though. They have a level of crispness that I really like looking at, and there are some subtle effects done to enhance certain actions that I appreciate as well, such as the neutral zone lighting up or going dim depending on if you're inside it or not. And there are individual screens throughout the game that, when idle and quiet, would make amazing screensavers. The soundtrack is appropriate and enjoyable, but also very short. You're listening to what essentially is Emmy's playlist, and tracks will repeat way too frequently as you play through the game. Also, occasionally the music will just disappear, and in a handful of instances I had to reboot the game entirely to get it back, although I'm guessing that's just a pre-release bug. There is a lot of hand-holding in the first hour of the game. Thankfully, that opens up a bit after you beat the first boss, allowing you to play for longer stretches without some new tutorial or dialogue sequence taking the controls away from you. In the end, my final playtime was roughly 12 hours, although you can probably subtract 2 hours from that as I spent a lot of time poking around at everything, and also because of a surprising difficulty spike late in the game that required a decent number of retries. The latter is odd considering you might consider this a rather chill style of platformer up until that point. Ultimately, there are things I like and things I very much don't about Yars Rising, but as I've said several times in this review, it's at least interesting, and I think interesting is in short supply these days. Honestly, if you asked me to come up with an update for Yars Revenge, I wouldn't know what to do either. I mean, I'm sure I probably wouldn't have come up with an anime lady hacker collective using Yars Revenge iconography as their method of doing hacks, but I don't know what I would have done in its place. The Yars Revenge Championship Edition minigame update things would have definitely been on my list of things to do, but the framework around them, no idea. So I can't fault this game for just taking a big ol' swing at it. The whole super quippy, super flirty anime style is not what I want or what I need, but there are enough, wait, what the hell? Aspects to the story as well as the legit fun Yars sequences that make this an interesting curiosity. Keep swinging, Atari and partners. Keep swinging.